Explorer 18 is a fiberglass production boat in South Africa. We had a couple of big run-ins with what's the name of the company? Honor Marine in the UK. They built the last Drascombe luggers. And the company that commissioned this design were the agents in South Africa for the Drascombe luggers. But they couldn't sell them because they were just too expensive for the South African market. So they asked me to do a similar boat. And I said, I'll design to a similar concept, but I won't copy the design that you're selling. And so this was the boat that ended up being built. And it's also surprisingly quick. And it's a much bigger boat than what the lugger is. And in fact, you can put a Drascombe lugger inside that boat and it won't even touch sides. But they had the two of them on a boat show in Cape Town. And a guy who owned a Drascombe lugger took a photograph of them and sent the photograph to Honor Marine. And Honor Marine started jumping up and down and tried to sue me for taking a mold of their boat and things like that. And they demanded that I send my lines to the British Marine Industries Federation. And I said, I'm not going to do that, but what I'll do is I'll send my lines to them, and you send your lines to the South African boating industry. And we let both sides tell you if I've copied your design. They never took me up on it. But then Honor Marine went bust. And they'd actually got the designer, Colonel Watkins, I think his name is. They got him to send me a letter that I'd copied his design, which was total nonsense. But then when he died, the rights to his designs were bought by another company. And they didn't get the molds, they only got the rights to build the boats. And this guy who'd made trouble for us went to work for that company. And there was a company in South Africa that was building the Shearwater 45s, and they wanted to market this boat in the UK. So they sent a boat to UK to go onto the boat shows. Well, this guy popped up at the boat shows and started shouting about court cases. And the importer knew that it wasn't a Drascombe lugger, but he didn't want to get involved in court cases, so the whole thing fell flat. But the silly part is that the company that got the molds of the Drascombe is a new company that's called Honor Marine, and they built my Cape Cutter 19, and I have a good relationship with them. And there is the Cape Cutter 19. Very successful little boat. This one here is fiberglass. They've built now, I think, about 120 of them for the UK market. Surprisingly quick little boat. This was a plywood one built in New Zealand by a South African, a friend of mine who moved to New Zealand. But to show the speed of this thing in light conditions, they've won the gaffer division of the Round the Island race a number of times, the Round the Isle of Wight. They always win the small gaffers, but they've won the outright gaffers as well. And we had a wooden and traditional boat rally in Cape Town, and then there was going to be a race as part of the event. But they first had judging for the Concours d'Elegance, and I was a judge, and the boating authoress, Annie Hill, was judging with me. And as a result of that, being involved with the judging, we got out to the start line late. In fact, later than I got to the start line here today. They knew we were coming, so they kept the start line open, unlike what happened here today. And when we got to the start line, the nearest boat to us was about half a mile down the course. The first mark was about 3 miles away, and the lead boats were approaching the first mark. And we took off chasing them. And well, when we got to the first mark, we were halfway through the fleet. Although it's a traditional boat rally, it's for people who are members of the Traditional Boat Association. There were some modern boats in it as well, like a Beneteau 45. We went past the Beneteau 45 like it was standing still. We got around the mark, and then the next boat on our hit list was a 30 square meters, Swedish racing boat, skimming dish racing boat, very short little waterline, minimal wetted surface, and they were broad reaching with a spinnaker up. And we came past them with a mainsail and a genoa, and we sailed through their lee. And we carried on up the course, and the lead boat was far ahead of anybody else, and wasn't even looking behind him because he was so far ahead. And approaching the second mark, I called, "Starboard!" And he turned, the look of shock on his face that there was another boat there, and it was a tiny boat. And we beat him around that mark, and we led the fleet the rest of the course. And he started 20 minutes late. But that's the wind was never more than about 5 or 6 knots. And that boat excels in those conditions. This was a little trailer sailor, TLC 19, built by a company called Nibi Boats in South Africa. And of most interest about this is that it proves the basis for these 2 boats. This boat was Rodgers, what else is his first name? I can't think. Paul Rodgers. He's a British, he's actually a New Zealander. And he calls himself an adventurer. He was wanting to break the distance open boat sailing record. And he was going to do it with this boat. And he either had to sail Cape Town to Australia, which would be crazy in a boat like that. It's an awful voyage. Or he had to sail non-stop Cape Town to Southampton. So that's what he chose to do. But he's one of the prize idiots in the world. And I was there. He was supposed to have his boat ready to go on this event. And the builder and I went down to the boat, and they didn't even have any stores on the boat. And we packed his boat, and we were towed out with him out of the bay. And I said to him, "Where are your tools?" And he said, "I don't need tools. You designed the boat and Gerfried built it. There's no need for tools." I said, "You can't set off on any ocean voyage without tools." And I had a pair of pliers in my pocket, and the builder had a screwdriver in his pocket, and those are the tools that he left with. Well, also, I said to him, "You've got to learn to ride a dinghy or a catamaran." And he said, "This boat will never capsize." I said to him, "I guarantee you're going to capsize many times between here and England." Well, he capsized 4 days out. First storm was 4 days out. He capsized the boat. He didn't know what to do. He weighed about 100 pounds. And he stood on the bottom of the boat pulling on the keel, and the boat was upside down and it would do nothing. He sat on the bottom of the boat until the mast broke off and the boat came back upright by itself. And he ended up in hospital in St. Helena. Now he's in prison in the UK on a 35-year prison sentence for running drugs. Like I said, he's one of the prize idiots of the world. Then this one here is Anthony Stewart's boat, and that is the boat that has sailed around the world, open boat. He's got a little orange cover there. That orange cover was gone within hours. He had no protection for himself when he sailed around the world. But those 2 boats, this actually is the plug from which that little trailer sailor was built. And when Anthony told me he was planning to sail around the world, I said, "You're mad." That hull was built as a very light hull, and we were going to put trapezes on the thing and fly around Table Bay with it, but it never happened. But he did it. He managed the trip. 312-6, folding trimaran. I'd say that I designed this in my fit of madness phase. It's a very complicated little boat, and after a couple of concepts like this, I settled on simple boats. I love simple boats, and that boat, I would never draw a boat like that now. It's just too complicated. It's got a folding system that is based on round beams that can be rotated into different positions to give you different ways you can fold the hulls. There you can see that's sailing situation. This can be trailing, or this can be trailing or docking. if you capsize it, you can get it back to upright. Well, it might work in flat water, you'll never do it in lumpy water. But it's just too complicated, and the beam system will cost as much to build as the whole boat should build. So I recommend to people normally that they just build it with a demountable beam system. This is the bigger sister to the Cape Cutter 19, the Cape Henry 21. Of course, it's got more speed and more space and so on. Then the mini Transat boats, we've sold a lot of these. In fact, the Sail magazine did a survey about 8 years ago, I think, of the mini Transats being built in North America, and I think they counted 20 were being built, and 11 of them were that one, our Mark I version. Since then we've done the Mark II, and this is now the Mark III. This has got a chine in the top sides, whereas that is just these are all plywood boats. This is just a radius chine hull. And they're surprising boats because, you know, you think with a boat like that you can that won't sail without its water ballast to give it power, but you can carry full sail up to 15 knots or so on a boat on these boats, and they take it very well. And to the Mark II, there's the lines of the Mark III, and there you can see the chine, how I worked it into the hull. And they're all plywood. And this is the cruising versions, and it's got a bit more headroom, there's a bit more height added to the cabin. This one I've sailed on a number of times. It's in Port Hadlock in Washington State, and we've had it on the Port Townsend Boat Festival 3-4 times now. Always attracts a lot of attention. And the first time that I went on it, we had that boat to tow. We went from Port Hadlock, I think, to Port Hadlow, which is where the wooden boat school is, and they wanted to get the other boat to the boat show. Actually, no, it wasn't that boat. It was an 18-foot clinker boat, and we were going to tow it. And you know, it was this little 21-foot boat towing an 18-foot boat under sail. And there were other little cruising boats out in the bay, and we passed all of them. And we were towing another boat. Those boats are surprisingly speedy. They're really nice to sail in. Very, very good manners. I did a racing show design for a South African company. Boats proved to be extremely fast, but the problem was that they were building in South Africa out of carbon Nomex, and then they were flying the boats to Europe, to the market, and the depressurization in the aeroplane was seriously damaging the hulls, and the company went bust because of what they were doing. You can imagine that your brand new boat that you've paid a lot of money for arriving with dimples all over it because these honeycomb cells are sucked in. DD23 and DD26, this is a New Zealand boat. We've sold, I think, about 200 sets of lamps for this one. This one that came later, it's really a contracted version, same height, same beam, but shorter, for people who've got smaller moorings. And it's got a smaller rig, of course. Very successful little racing boat, also a radius chine plywood, lifting keel. Then this is based on the DD26. A client came to me and he said he wants to do the classic racing down in the Caribbean, and he thinks that DD26 will be an ideal boat to turn into classic lines. And I said, well, I don't know, we can try. And that's the result. This guy has put a shorter cabin onto it. This boat's actually just being launched at the moment, and it's going to be on the Georgetown Wooden Boat Show, which is 2 weeks time. He's got the waterline in the wrong place. That's not that's actually the design waterline. This boot stripe should be about 3 inches higher up. So the boat looks lighter than it actually is. But it'll be a spectacular boat to sail. He's got the gaff rig on it, and this is the modern square top mainsail. And I look forward to sailing on that boat, and it's attracted a tremendous amount of attention. When I posted that photograph on my website, Sailing Anarchy picked it up and put it on as their pick of the day, and I had 2,500 hits on it on my Facebook page in a matter of hours.
What's the beam on that boat?
It's 8'1", I think. It's a trailer sailor. That is not one of my designs. It's not a DD26 or a DD29 retro, but it is the boat which the guy who commissioned the 29 retro is the captain of that boat. That boat is Rainbow, a very famous J-class racer, and the captain of that boat is the one who commissioned that design. He wasn't captain at the time, the captain came afterwards. But there's a big difference between that boat and his own boat. He hasn't had the time to even start building his 29 retro yet. DD950 is a 950 class, also radius chine plywood with it's got a hard chine there on the top side. It took me, I put a lot of effort into designing radius chine holes so that people didn't have to have chines on their boats, because the boating industry told everybody chines are slow, chines harm your resale value, chines tell you it's amateur built. Now everybody wants chines, and all the production builders are putting chines onto their boats. And chines aren't good for fiberglass boats. They're good for plywood boats and steel boats, but they're not good for fiberglass boats. Too many flat surfaces. You see these guys turning it with that's an engine lift. And they had another engine lift on the other end, and then they just turned it by hand.
What software do you use to do the designs?
I design the lines, I do my lines and decks in Multisurf, which is John Letcher's line spraying program. And then I go into Rhino to do all of the panel development and kits, develop the kits and that sort of thing. And then I go into AutoCAD and do all the detailing in AutoCAD. This is Mount Gay 30. The origin of the Mount Gay 30 was that in UK they developed the Whitbread 30 as a baby sister to the Whitbread 70s that were being used for round the world racing. And the Whitbread 30 fell a bit flat, and Mount Gay Rum took it on, and it became the Mount Gay 30. And I used to call this on my website the Mount Gay 30. And then I started getting complaints about my website rating, getting banned because of words that I've used on it, and it was this Mount Gay which was the culprit, so I changed it to the MG30. And this is a DD34. This boat was built in Ukraine, and it was launched actually while the Civil War was going on. And it's interesting to communicate with people like that. You know, I've got clients in 90 countries, and some of them are in very strange or stressful situations. This guy was, I'm not sure, I think he works in the pharmaceutical industry. But while that Civil War was on, they were setting up emergency hospitals for the civilians who were getting hurt in all the raids that were going on. And they would find office space somewhere, and then they would somehow find all of the medical equipment and stores and so on that they needed, and they would set up these emergency rooms in an office, and then the government would find out about it and shut them down, and they would move on and do the same thing in another place. That is pretty much settled down. They don't need it anymore, and he's actually just finishing a cruise in the Med. He cruised down, I think it's the Volga that goes from Ukraine down into the Black Sea and then through Istanbul, and he's cruised Turkey and Greece and so on. Now he's on his way back home to Ukraine. But these people's lives have changed totally. Shearwater 39 and 45, the boat that I raced on to Rio in '93 was like this. So it's Shearwater 39. This is the Shearwater 45. We won the Boat of the Year award at the Indianapolis show in 2000 with that boat. And the headline that Cruising World used when they did the article on that boat was, "This bird really flies," because nobody can believe how fast those birds are. I've done the schooner race twice now on a schooner version of this. The schooners are nowhere near as fast as what the cutter is. But with the cutter rig, those boats are very, very quick. They'll sail away from most 55-footers. And you can see it's a very modern underbody that's got spade rudder, balanced spade rudder. They've got beautiful manners. Some of my steel designs, Outbay 30, these ones here, that's Outbay 33. This is all in Hout Bay, which was my home for the 21 years before we moved to the States. This boat was built by amateur builders in Russia, and they produced that standard of finish on the boat. Hout Bay series. This boat here, I was contacted maybe 15 years ago. Andrei Popovich in Vladivostok. He's wanting to build a steel boat, but he doesn't have enough money for my plans. And so I said to him, "What do you do for a living?" Well, he actually didn't have much of a living, but he had a place where he could build this boat. And I said to him, "Well, I need an agent in Russia. Are you willing to give it a try?" And I said, "You'll get a discount on the plans if you are my agent." And it's a relationship that worked out very well. But this here is a shipyard where they built naval ships and oil tankers and everything, and while his boat was being built, that was the only project in this massive shipyard, was his little 40-foot boat. And then this is a Hout Bay 70, which is that hull is really a bigger version of this one. This boat was called Spirit of Malvern. They sailed that boat from St. Helena to Cape Town, 12 days, 10 days they didn't touch the helm. The boat just sailed itself. They just set it on the heading that they wanted, and the boat needed no attention from the crew. It's now, then it was sold to a guy in India. It was called Spirit of India, and now it's in charter service. Hout Bay 50s. This one here is an excursion boat, and you're not going to count those people. There are 40 people on that. 40 paying passengers on that boat plus the crew. Sorry, am I in your way all the time? No. And that boat has a reputation. Almost no matter what wind strength is blowing, they will take you sailing. Their cut-off wind speed is 50 knots. And there's that chunk of granite. It forms a big wall, a big fence that holds the wind back. You get an inversion layer that forms over the area behind the mountain, which is big and flat. And as long as that inversion layer is below the top of the mountain, the wind stays away. But between that peak, this is Devil's Peak, and this is Table Mountain. There's a gully in between. When you see the clouds start creeping through that, it's called the saddle. When the clouds start creeping through the saddle, you know, okay, the inversion layer is lifted to that high, and the wind is starting to come through. When the inversion layer gets to the top of the mountain, and you get a tablecloth coming over the top, and that tablecloth comes down there, you know that you've got, we call it a pompo. You've got a very, very strong wind that is coming. But the nature, the exact direction of the wind affects it tremendously. And you can be sailing there, and you could be in 50 knots of wind, and 100 yards away there's no wind, or vice versa. You could have 50 knots blowing here, and there's nothing around the corner, or there might be 50 knots here, and there's 60 knots around the corner. Or you might have a day like this, and you've got gorgeous sailing. There's a sister ship to that in St. Thomas. She's called Doubloon. She's licensed by the US Coast Guard to carry 50 passengers. And this is a cargo version, same hull, pilot house, and there's a big cargo hatch there. It can carry 25 tons of cargo. And this is a cruising version, same boat, very, very pretty boats. And these are steel boats, or metal boats that were commissioned by Howdy Bailey down in Norfolk on behalf of customers. This Echo was built for a professor who lived in St. Mary's, I think it's called, on the other side. And that boat is now in North Carolina. She went down to Florida for a number of years. She's now in North Carolina, and eventually she'll be back on Chesapeake Bay. This boat, Little Creek 47, Howdy Bailey's yard was in Little Creek, hence the name. She did a lot of schooner races. She's now probably 20 years old, and is now owned by Howdy Bailey's son. He liked that boat so much he bought her. And this boat here is actually aluminium, commissioned by a very rich man in Virginia Beach, property developer who likes complicated concepts. Most complicated boat I've ever designed. And that commission came while I was sailing double-handed from Rio de Janeiro to Cape Town. And my wife told me over the radio a parcel has just arrived, a big parcel with a commission for the design and a deposit check. And it was a file that thick, what he wanted in his boat. And I now have 2 files on that design because it's so complicated. I never want to design a complicated boat like that again. And he sold the boat in the end because it was just too complicated. So much, it had the full laundry. It's got an exercise equipment in it. It's got a gym in the cockpit. And they went cruising. The plan was they were going to cruise down to the Caribbean. And that was when his wife decided she preferred gourmet cooking, and it's not easy to cook gourmet stuff when you're heeled over. So they then got themselves a power cat, 60-foot power cat that can do 30 knots. These ones were both designed for steel, but these are actually both aluminium boats. Blue Pearl has sailed around the world, been into the Arctic, the Antarctic, done some very good, excellent voyages. This one was built in Italy. This is a 43 pilot. This is a 38 pilot. Very pretty boat. And it sails like a fiberglass boat. Even the steel ones, they've raced them in the Cape Town to St. Helena race for 38s, and they finish up there ahead of the fiberglass cruisers of the same size. Got a very efficient hull. And these are designs. These 2 were commissioned by Howdy Bailey. This is actually that's Howdy there. This picture is 1986. We took that boat to the Annapolis show. But I visited Howdy in 1983, and we had dinner with him. And when he dropped us back at the hotel, he said to me, "Have you got any plans for breakfast?" I said, "No." He said, "Okay, I'll pick you up for breakfast." And he just took me to breakfast, not my wife. And over breakfast, he commissioned a design for 64 feet. And the biggest boat I designed up till then was a 34-foot steel boat. And he did an excellent job of it. And then the boat went to charter, and she's actually in Annapolis now, and quite derelict. The owner can't afford to rehabilitate her, so she's just falling to pieces now. And then Howdy was going to build this one for himself. This is a 57, but he never did. He ended up building one for somebody else. And this is a 65. You can see how clean these hulls are. And they've all got fin and skeg underbody.